The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, folks. We're going to start our webinar here in just a minute. We're letting a last-minute crowd show up and file into the auditorium, and when that's done, we'll start our broadcast. So just hold on. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Okay, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to today's Mailers Hub webinar. Today we're talking about seamless acceptance, and our presenters will be Tom Glassman, who is a service engineer at Ricoh and specializes in postal affairs. Tom is also one of our biggest helpers, our biggest assets here at Mailers Hub, and he holds one of our seats at MTAC. And he is a frequent contributor to MTAC work groups and other activities there. He is a mail-piece design consultant. He holds a mail-piece design consultant certification. He is a Six Sigma lean black belt certified individual and is a member of the Professional Association of Dive Instructors, which has nothing to do with the Postal Service, I would hope. But nonetheless, we're being helped today by Michael Patterson. Michael Patterson is a logistics director for Tri-Win Mailing in Dallas, with 6 years experience in that job and 26 years experience in the industry. And he has led teams there to successful implementation of full service and seamless programs. So with that in mind, we will turn things over to Tom and to Michael to hear more about seamless acceptance. Gentlemen?
Good afternoon, Leo. And Michael, thank you for helping out. I do appreciate it. To the audience, when I switched from Wyland Direct to Ricoh, my focus went from marketing mail with a little first class to mostly first class and transactional mail with a little marketing mail. So just in case, I invite my former teammate, Michael Patterson, who is basically strictly a marketing mail MSP, to assist with questions. If you have a question, please feel free to key it in, and Leo will ask it while we're on the slide, or we can roll back with the wonderful Michelle controlling the slides. Michelle, next slide. So I want to cover today major changes in seamless acceptance in regards to the bulk mail detached units. When seamless is taking effect, there was recently a Federal Register posting, and the presentation, until we get down into the practical stuff, is going to follow the Federal Register filing. So in the Federal Register, they talk about terms. What is 90% full service? So you all should be very familiar that you need uniqueness on the piece, meaning the serial number, either 9-digit or 6-digit, is unique for 45 days. The trade tags are unique for 45 days, and the skid flags are unique for 45 days. And it would be nice if you uploaded an electronic file to the post office. So you need to keep at least 90% of your mailing volume up over 90% to be a full service mailer. Next slide, Michelle. Wow, we definitely have a lag today. That's what happens when everyone is home and hiding from the virus. So auto finalization, again, I'm going through the terms, so when we get into the proposal, we're all on the same page. Auto finalization, you've uploaded your document, and for us at Wyland, it was in the morning. the documents would auto-finalize and they would take the money out. So beginning last January, seamless acceptance had to auto-finalize. I know we did have jobs that didn't, and the clerk would still have to go in and finalize those, but it became less and less. So out of a week, and submission of probably 30 to 40 jobs, we'd have one or two that wouldn't finalize. Next slide. And again, feel free to key in questions. We can roll back and talk about it. The huge difference with seamless acceptance, the old way, when you submitted a mailing, it had to go through a process of about 10 things where they weighed the pieces, they looked at your pre-sort, they checked your postage, everything was manual. Now, when they're looking for errors, it's based on a census. What did you mail during the month, and what percentage error did you have against your total volume during the month? So instead of your analysis being on a per job basis, it's on a clock. It's on a month basis. Next slide, please. And then, Michael, feel free to jump in if I'm missing something as we talk about terms. So electronic induction, e-induction, as most of you are aware, I lead with Michelle from ALG, the Fast User Group. And this is actually one of the things we look at is when skids are dropped at the dock, what is the percentage rate of those skids being scanned? And it's actually pretty high. So we typically run in excess of 95% of the skids crossing the dock are scanned at the post office. So the electronic induction eliminated the manual submission of the 8125s. Your mail.dat or mail XML file has the skids listed, and the mail.dat, it's the CSM file. Within the CSM file, it's a child-parent relationship. So if you ever took the CSM file apart and the mail.dat, you could see the trays, and the trays are listed with the parent, the skid. So everything is done electronically, and the skids are scanned. When the skids are scanned on the dock, they're verified that you've paid for the mail and that it's in the right location. So electronic induction, I think it was a good thing and it eliminated a lot of extra prep. Next slide, Michelle. A sampling verification. So in the old days, the clerks would weigh every skid. They would take some of the mail apart. They would look at your pre-sort. The current sampling verification is the clerk selects one skid. He scans the skid flag, takes 3 trays, which in this case are called handling units. And then again, they scan the tray tag, the handling unit tag, and they make sure there's an association of the handling unit to the skid flag in the eDocs in your mail.dat. And then they scan 10 pieces per tray or 30 total pieces. At the same time, they weigh them. They'll look and they'll scan the barcodes on each piece. And again, they're looking for, are the pieces nested correctly in the sampling? Nesting being, is the piece in the right tray? Is the tray on the right skid? So that would be the sampling. It's a 10-3-1 process. And again, that's where the weight and the eligibility based on the class occur. So on the non-prof, they're going to go through, they'll check for banking, travel, insurance, making sure that that's not in there, and you're maintaining your nonprofit eligibility. Next slide, please. Okay, seamless and seamless parallel. So the old 10-step pre-sort method, as you cross over into the seamless environment, where they do that 1, 3, 10 process, and your mail is measured downstream, before you're going to accept the downstream census of your mail, they have you run parallel, meaning you're still going to do the normal 10-step verification. They're going to look at your paperwork, and they're also going to examine your downstream analysis or downstream census. And they're going to compare how well you're doing and making sure that you are as pretty much error-free as possible. Are you staying within the thresholds of the specific testing categories? Undocumented mail. So you're being tested. How's your undocumented mail? Is everything in your documentation? Or how many pieces are showing up as undocumented during the month? Your COA. Did you perform a change of address and mail within the 90 days? So those things are looked at before you go 100% seamless. Any questions showing up, Leo, or anything to add, Michael, before we switch slides?
No, so far I think we're okay.
All right. Michael, anything?
No, nothing yet.
Okay. All right. Undocumented pieces, the biggest headache amongst MSPs. And I actually have a story later in the slideshow. I got called to a site that was assessed, and I did some digging, and I'll give you the flow that I went through and what I actually found. So if you turn in a bar-coded piece of mail and the post office tries to match it back to your mail.dat file, and it can't be found within a 45-day period, the piece is then undocumented, and if you break the threshold for undocumented mail, the post office would like their postage. So it takes a lot of detective work to prove these things out, but it's probably one of the biggest issues, undocumented mail. Next slide, Michelle, please. So we got through all the terms, the proposal. So if you have a detached unit, an authorized detached unit, the post office is requiring that you be a seamless mailer by February 1st, 2021. So mailers that are authorized as a detached mail unit must consistently submit 90% full service eligible mail, and the mailings will be verified under seamless. So that would be the 1, 3, 10 process and your downstream measurements. So when you look at your scorecard, there are 4 tabs. The first tab, when you look at it, is your volume, what you did for the month. The second tab would be your electronic submission. It's going to look at your mail.dat file, and it's going to make sure that you've used proper reference files. Did you use the correct mail direction file? The CAS certification or the CAS software that you use, is it properly registered with the post office? Down the bottom of that page would be the move update, where they're looking at your COA and UAA percentages. COA being change of address, UAA being undeliverable as addressed. The next tab you'll look at as part of this seamless process will be e-induction. For those of you that are shipping marketing mail, did the mail get sent to the right office, and did you take the correct rate? The last tab, the 4th tab, soon to be not the last tab, but currently the last tab, is what did the machines, the mail processing equipment, see on the equipment compared to proper DMM standards? Was it sorted correctly? Was the barcode a good barcode? So all those measurements or census is done on that page. Soon, emails, electronic mail irregularity reports will be transformed into pictures and notes, and those will be showing up on the 5th tab. Next slide, Michelle, please.
And Tom, just so folks know, if they're not seeing the slides change fast, there's a certain degree of lag today for some reason, because everybody's at home and online. So if you see a lag, it's not just you.
I just figured the internet's tired from everyone being at home for so long. So it's part of the proposal, number 2, the bulk mail entry units must claim full service discounts by July 1st, 2021. You're not required to enroll in Seamless if you're turning in the mail, but it's going to go through a Seamless process. And again, that's by July 1st, 2021. Next slide. Leo, this is really pacing me here. Okay. Detached mail units and bulk mail entry units. In order to participate in Seamless and a detached mail unit is the e-induction requirement. So they don't want to see 8125s. They want proper scannable skid flags on your skids, and they want the proper e-docs turned in around those skids. They absolutely positively are trying to eliminate the paperwork with the 8125s. If you are unable to conform to Seamless requirements by the February 1st, 2021, you need to, by this November, submit a request in for an extension, and I've included the link for the extension. And it's going up to Mark McQuarrie's team at headquarters to look at why you can't match or why you cannot be in Seamless by that time.
And Tom, just as information, on a conference call we had last week, I asked Mark about the timeline for Seamless, and he said that at this time there's no plan to delay anything because of the whole virus thing. So if anyone is looking at a timeline issue, they need to take action with the exception and not wait for some sort of official delay for any other reason.
Thanks, Leo. Next slide, Michelle. I will be getting to the practical stuff eventually. Again, I wanted everyone to be aware of the Federal Register filing. So again, I know I'm repeating myself. I'm stressing this. Manual verification is going away. You need to be on Seamless by July of 2021. The results, as you can see from the bottom, will go back to the CRID of the eDoc submitter. Non-full service mailings will continue to be accepted and verified using traditional manual verifications. They do not want them at the detached unit. It would have to go to the bulk mail entry unit. Next slide, please. So the funny thing is I was part of this list when we sat with Preetha and we first sat down and talked about Seamless. There was a group of us coming up with positive reasons to go on Seamless. I'm not going to read them, but it did speed up our verification. The old way with the 8125s, We used to have to show the loads to the clerk. With e-induction, we don't have to bring anything back in the plant. We set up all the drop ship and it can leave. And then we just submit a day or two before the mail is being entered into the processing facilities. So a list of the good things when you get a chance, and you start scrolling through the PDF. Next slide, please. I promise the good stuff's coming. Annual mailing fee. So basically, Postal is not looking to see if the permits have been paid when you're turning your mailing in. When you hit your anniversary date, they're looking to see if you have a over 90% full service, you're an over 90% full service mailer. If you fall under the 90, then they're going to take the fee. If you're over the 90, the first job after your anniversary date will be the new anniversary date, is basically what this is saying. Next slide, please. Leo, I can take a nap in between the slides. All right.
I think it's you, Tom, because I got my screen, my refresh right away.
Well, Florida, with all the retirees, things will move a little slower down here. So we'll make that excuse. So let's start looking at the errors. I always refer to this as an art as opposed to a science. Some of the things are just pure fact, and some of them you got to kind of look at where the errors are coming from and why. The arrow is pointing down to the move update section of this scorecard. And then if you are an MSP, if you go in on the, when you go into the scorecard, on the left is the eDoc submitter, on the right, if you go in as mail preparer, you can see each customer and you can look at how each job or customer contributes to your total score. Next slide, Michelle. So as a reminder, the COA, you have to update the addresses in your file. In the first months, 1 to 12, the piece is forwarded. If the address has a file and you did not change the address, then it's going to show up as an error. And in months 13 to 18, the pieces are returned from the person that sent it, and they will give or provide the move update on a label that are known as a lim. I'm bringing this up. Yes.
I have a question here. Is the 90% guideline based on the number of mailings entered or the number of pieces mailed? The percent seems to vary based on what you're looking at.
So it's based on the percentage of pieces that are turned in. So for instance, if you dilute, although you can get it away, if you dilute your piece count with EDDM, which has no barcodes, it could be a problem and pull you out of that 90% range. Again, Mark McCreary's office understands that, and they typically are not supposed to count EDDM against the total. And if you're seeing that problem, just find a business mail acceptance person. So for major mailers, it's Randy Workman. And then Leo, is Tolochin still responsible for everyone else?
I'm not sure. The names keep changing.
So there's been a lot of movement at Postal. So go back to your manager for business mail entry and then work your way up if you don't get the right answers. I'm bringing this up because I want to show you for MSPs where you can have an ancillary business on the side for doing NCOA and PCOA, but I'll explain that later. Next slide, Michelle, please.
Hey, Tom, while you're changing slides, I have another question. For seamless,
Yeah.
does all your mail have to be palletized?
So if you're drop shipping, either containerized or palletized, if you're going into origin, we were basically putting everything on one skid. It could have been a cage. Our supplies were skids. Michael, any editorial comments around that?
Yeah, I mean, we palletize everything just for the e-induction. It makes it simpler, even going origin. Taking the pallet down, all they have to do is scan the pallet flag. Otherwise, the clerk has to give you a, I forget what the other one is for first class and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just better to palletize everything. But if you're drop shipping, it definitely has to be palletized with a e-induction pallet flag on it.
And just as a note, I know this is odd and it's against DMM prep standards. If we had one tray, we would generate a skid flag because the postal would scan the flag and I would know that the skid made it to the facility. And then if the mail wasn't delivered, I could then track it from skid to tray or tray to piece. So we would always generate a skid, even if it was one tray, and that would be a barcode that I could make the actual skid accountable and see it as it went into the facility. So I'm not sure everyone's aware. This is going to be important when I talk to you about undocumented mail. I'm going to bring up a case where I was called into a client and the client had a good sized bill from the post office. You can right click the crids and start the drill downs by category. So if you right click and you want to look at move update errors, COA errors, UAA, nesting errors, again, once you right click, you can start your drill downs into specific errors. Next slide, please.
Hey, Tom, a question. What's the definition of the UAA warning under the move update section of the scorecard that was not on that slide you just showed?
Sure. So there's no, at this point, there is no assessment for UAA. Postal thinks you're being punished enough by the piece not being delivered. I'm just joking. So it's a warning letting you know that you have bad addresses. And again, I'm going to talk to you, the audience, about an ancillary service and why that number is so important. So here's a drill down on a COA, change of address. It talks about when the person filed the change of address, when the change of address became effective, and then it'll have your barcode in there so that you can backtrack it. So if you do have a COA assessment, you can start to show your customer what's going on, especially customer updated files, if the files really weren't updated. So the drill downs can be important. You can also, by the way, as a note, you can get all the error data, whole error data. So what will show up on the screen, you may only have 200 or 300 addresses or errors available on a drill down. You can actually get all the files through IV. So all of the error data is available as a push from IV. Next slide, Michelle. Okay, so when I look at the scorecards, I actually export them out. I never look at the actual scorecard. It's easier for me to look at the categories. At one point, and Michael's done a much better job than I had conditional formatting. So if a percentage hit 50% of a threshold, I would color it a yellow. If we hit 3/4 of a threshold, it would go orange. and then if I reached the threshold through conditional formatting, I went red. Michael's got a much more sophisticated system. It was much better than what I created. So here, the thing that sticks out the most in the total column as you're going down would be barcode uniqueness and trade default barcode warnings. Again, there is no assessment, but it's telling us that the barcoded trade tag is wrong. Typically, I'll see a lot more of this from a pre-sort bureau where they're changing the trays out so fast, the old tag is left in the tray and hasn't been removed. That's typically where you'll see this. Next slide, please. So on the sheet, there were mailer ID, mailer ID in the handling unit, the trays were wrong. That means the tray tag wasn't replaced typically. Barcode uniqueness around container errors, barcode uniqueness around the piece errors, and then the default tray barcode warnings. So again, the things that bother me would be the handling unit ID, the mailer ID. I don't really care, as long as it made it to the right post office. The barcode uniqueness on the container, if they copied the skid flag, it's not a big deal as long as it made it to the right place. Barcode uniqueness is a problem, and then I talk about presentment. So one of the things, being our first class mailer, I see a lot of certified mail. 7 states now allow proof of presentment by proving you delivered the mail through the IMB. So if the IMB has to stop the clock, which is the 918, 919 sort function within the sectional center, that's determined as delivered. And there are 7 states that you can use that for legal reasons to say this document was delivered to the client. I think this will become a lot more prevalent in the future. I think more states will adopt the IMB as proof of presentment of the mailing. Default tray barcode warnings. If the mail was on the right skid and got to the right post office, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, again, the art as opposed to the science. The big one for me here is the barcode uniqueness piece errors, because if I'm tracking the mail and I'm using it as proof of presentment, if there's duplicate barcodes, one of the 2 pieces can't be tracked and one of the 2 pieces can't be used as proof of presentment. Next slide. I should have put a hammock up, Leo.
Then we'd hear you snoring.
So from the scorecard, as you can see, the barcode uniqueness errors, there were 3,464. That causes me major heartburn, as opposed to the 548 default tray barcode warnings. And again, for me, as long as the trays were on the right skid and I ended up in the right post office, I don't care. My heartburn is around the uniqueness on the piece. Again, I typically see these on pieces that have gone through a pre-sort bureau. An MSP will occasionally get a run if they back a file up where they're generating duplicate pieces, but most of the time I would see it in a pre-sort bureau as opposed to a list mailer. Next slide. These are all real, by the way. I pulled them from various customers, Ricoh customers, and various things that I've worked on. So one of the other things I look at, if you pull a scorecard on the 11th day of the next month, all the mail should be in there. So if you mail something on the last day of a month, Postal is still collecting data on that mail from that month until midnight on the 10th day. So the sites where I'm running 85% scan rate and 88% scan rate causes me great heartburn. So my research, just to let you know, my research, this was a customer we were turning into a pre-sort bureau, and first pass was done, and then they use a network. It goes out across the network. And what happened was when it went into some of the facilities, the pieces got re-barcoded. And as soon as you re-barcode the piece, we lose visibility downstream. So it wasn't the problem. Again, more of an art than a science. But if we're tracking the mail and trying to use the mail, it becomes a problem. So again, I work with the pre-sort bureaus and let them know what's going on and to fix it and stop re-barcoding the mail. Next slide, please. Okay, my story of woes. So I got called to a facility. They had a bill for $1,470 and they didn't want to pay it. So what do? I've got to pull the scorecard. Can you go to the next slide, please, Michelle? I'm going to walk you through my investigation, and I'm expecting if you're an MSP and you're running into the same problem, this is how you would work your way around the problem. So the first thing I did was I right-clicked the CRID. I then got into the detail report. And as you can see, most of the pieces that were showing up, and again, we were running between 12 and 15,000 pieces a month. What is it missing? Anyone? Bueller? It's missing the zip +4+2. So this told me it was all the residual mail. I then exported the file out into Excel. Once I was in Excel, I put the file into barcode order, and I could see runs of the sequence number. So the last 9 digits of the barcode being the sequence number, I could see it go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and every single day I had 100 to 200 pieces. So then I sorted in order by day, and I could see runs every single day of 100 to 200 pieces. And then when I started thinking about what was going on, and they're all missing the zip +4+2, the company was barcoding the residual mail that couldn't be pre-sorted. And what happened was all these pieces were going through the meter at 50 cents with a barcode on them. So the post office didn't have any e-docs, and they said, we want our postage money. So we went through the meter fills, the meter logs, showed Postal that we actually did pay for all these pieces, and through the runs every day in the pre-sort report, I could show the residual quantities left over from the pre-sort. So I was able to create documentation between the residual that bounced out from the pre-sort report and the meter logs that we actually paid, and therefore we didn't have to pay the assessment against the 15,000 pieces at the end of the month. So again, detective work. But it takes a while to go through all these things. Go ahead.
Tom, I had a couple of things come in here. One is from somebody who was saying that a client of theirs used a mid on mail pieces that was also used by a mailer on the East Coast. Another the mail, mail was in California, and the mids were also used by mail on the East Coast, and over 300,000 pieces showed up as undocumented. So the penalty would have been $72,000, but they were on seamless parallel, fortunately. But this was an illustration of how an error in accurately showing the mid would cause this kind of a problem. Another question here I have was, what's the difference between the P-scan rate and the adjusted P-scan rate that I believe was on the earlier slide?
So adjusted P-scan takes those pieces that don't have a start the clock and pulls them out. So for instance, if mail is delayed at a facility and it's no longer in measurement, those pieces are pulled out. I never look at the adjusted rate, I look at the scan rate. Because all I care about is the percentage pieces as opposed to postal thinking usable pieces. I know I'm not phrasing that correctly, but I never use adjusted rate. I always look at the percentage in the full scan, whether they're using a start the clock or not. Any other questions? As far as the wrong mid on the piece being used, a mailer ID, I would have gone back and asked them to find out where the mail was entered, if there was any way to backtrack it, and then see if you could track down who was using the mid. But it does present one of those problems, yes. And it's the same issue with mids that are being used from companies that delegate mids out because they're tracking mail around informed delivery. So up until recently, so for instance, BCC, if they're tracking mail, may have you use, actually I don't know if BCC, that's a bad example. If one of the tracking companies give you a mid to use so they can track your mail for you, and you're setting up a campaign, and then your customer takes that mid with another MSP and then runs an informed delivery campaign. Now the wrong pieces have the wrong image. So yes, there has to be some quality control, and that's why when I did mailings at Weiland, we always had to use the Weiland mid on the piece. That way I could ensure that we weren't going to have errors. If another company needed, go ahead, Leo.
No, I'm just wondering, on the screen there, does the codes listed on the left column mean anything? I guess all those 13s.
Yes, but I forgot what the column is, and there is a translation in the guide. So every column, there is a guide for each one of the thresholds and what the error is. And as a matter of fact, I led the group that translated the guide. I've recently, I know I'm getting into a side topic, but I've asked about us going through and removing a lot of the error codes because we have an error code for, I'm trying to think where it would be repetitious. I can't think of something offhand, but recently when IWCO was looking at the testing on the emails showing up in the last as a fifth column where we get the pictures, it was found then that there was a lot of repeat errors. So we've gone back and requested the postal, we redo the guide and simplify all the error codes. So those numbers are out there. There's guides to each one of the errors. I'm sorry, Leo, I'm not really answering the question, but the guides have it all.
Okay, I think the 13 may refer to the undocumented category, so all those pieces, maybe, well, the 13s are undocumented.
All right, next slide. So here's where I was talking about an ancillary business. We went into a company, as you can see, they're mailing between 3 and 4 million pieces a month, and they use various vendors. In the month of January, we started NCOing their entire database of 20 million records once a month. So now the MSPs don't have to do the NCOA, but as you can see, as a percentage, the UAA and the COA both dropped when we started cleaning up the entire database. So if you're an MSP and you obviously have NCOA software, you also have access to PCOA software. PCOA is a proprietary change of address. There's a bunch of vendors out there that offer it, but you can see a dramatic change in the percentage once we started cleaning up the client's database. Again, this increases their deliverability. The offset cost is I'm reaching more customers, and the MSPs downstream don't have to do it anymore. You just provide them the NCOA certificate. So there's an opportunity for revenue for the MSPs out there providing NCOA on a regular basis. Again, you have to be careful with the PCOA. Some businesses have restrictions. My suggestion is if you cannot change the address other than NCOA, so for instance, Medicare, Medicaid, governed by HHS, Health and Human Services, they say you can use NCOA. If I have a hit on PCOA, I would mark the record and I would send the card out that says, hey, we found that you moved. Can you please call us to confirm your new address? So you can have a mailing campaign around the hits with PCOA in a restricted business. Next slide, please. Bookending, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. There are, I think, 10 categories of bookending. What is bookending? So I have 2 undocumented pieces in the middle of a mailing. So on the A's, the B's are the unknown pieces, and then the A's are myself. So Postal assumes that because A was before the B and A was after the B, I've now bookended, so the B pieces have to belong to me. So that's how undocumented mail would get associated back to me and have a specific category number next to it. Next slide, please.
Hey, Tom, question here. What's the difference again between NCOA and PCOA? Could you just go over that one more time?
Yeah, NCOA is a product offered by the post office. So NCOA, all of the pre-sort vendors plus offer NCOA. PCOA is a proprietary change of address. So I recently moved from Delray Beach, Florida to Fort Myers, Florida. I did file an NCOA, but if I hadn't, I did tell AT&T, my cell phone provider. I did tell Comcast, my cable provider. I did tell Scuba Magazine that I get monthly that I moved. So the PCOA is an offering of proprietary files that have been ganged together with cookie crumbs. So AT&T knows I moved from address A to address B. I left cookie crumbs. Comcast knows I moved from address A to address B. Again, I left cookie crumbs. So if I just showed up in the middle of nowhere and I didn't use any of the other vendors, that basically there's no cookie crumbs to find me. If I moved my subscriptions and my utilities, I've left cookie crumbs, so therefore a PCOA file can find me, even if I didn't file for NCOA with the post office. And just as a note, if any of you are looking at Green and Secure and getting an ACS file back from the post office, the ACS file is probably 2 to 3% better than the NCOA file. So the COA file is a different file than NCOA and has probably another 2 to 3% better hit rate. And it's around family moves, individual moves, and that sort of thing. But I have done this before and documented it, and I confirmed it with Jim Wilson at Postal, the difference between the COA file and the NCOA file. Again, bookending, how many pieces you need around the bookends, what's the minimum for the pieces that are undocumented. I threw this in as a reference slide only. Next slide, please. There was publishing this week on new STIDs, service type IDs. The top one, political mail for first class. The bottom one, political mail for marketing or standard mail class. Next slide, please. Again, just keeping everyone current. Caps. So Postal is closing caps. All the services should be migrated over now. So they've come out with final dates, although they've moved again. So a CAPS debit account, you have till May 1st, was May 1st, is now moved to August. The CAPS Trust without a gateway account, May to August. And then CAPS Trust with a business customer gateway account, May 1st. As you can see, so again, threw this in for reference. CAPS accounts that had been inactive are just going to be closed. I'm really not sure what happens to the money, whether it gets sent back, and what happens if the company can't be found. I guess that's a Leo question. Next slide, please. I just recently used this slide on the last webinar, which is a mail disruption. It was a mail disruption webinar. I love this slide. I actually called Jim Wilson's team because when you use the link, it used to show up in Puerto Rico. I got them to fix that. And it's a wonderful way of looking at and finding out immediately where the disruptions in service are. This is unofficial from me. I also look at it for hot zones when there's clusters. So I can tell from the Boston market, again, when the virus has been detected by customers or employee, the office is closed, it's sanitized, and then it's opened back up within a day or two. So I continue to monitor. As you can see, Greater Boston, it's in Dedham, Massachusetts. It'll tell you where the mail's been directed to, and typically, sometimes, why the office has been closed. On the map, when you key in, when you look at it and you start to zoom in, not key in, red dots, blue dots, and yellow dots are offices. Squares are processing plants. So a red dot is a closed office. A yellow dot is a partially functioned office. So for instance, Retail services could be down, but the box section is open. If you double click on the dot, it'll tell you what's available at that site. The map also has, in the top right corner, I can filter and overlay. So I typically keep NOAA and FEMA and districts in the area as overlays. And again, you can adjust the map to what you want. You can eliminate offices, you can eliminate plants, you can have offices, you can have plants. And then the other thing is the weather overlay, which is big for me. And again, on the webinar for mail disruption, I told everyone how I used it during hurricane season to see where power was lost in Florida, and we actually delayed our mailings going out to where the homes were without power for a few days. So, and I could see looking at the red dots where it ran off. So it's a useful map. I look at it typically every day, so I know where the trouble spots in the country are, because all the questions from the Ricoh sites, we have approximately 3,000 sites. I can respond to them and let them know where the delays are for first-class mail or delivery. So great map. Jim and his team at Postal have done a great job. They keep it current. I know the methodology they use, and the link is in the slide.
And Tom, some folks have had problems in the past and today as well, getting that link to work. So you may have to cut and paste into your browser, or if you're calling from a facility, you may need to check with your IT people about getting out beyond your own networks.
So in the last time, I believe someone had a problem, and then when I checked it, it's when I had Jim fix. Oh, it was Kristen. Let me know. It kept coming up as Puerto Rico. I confirmed that, and then wrote to Jim Wilson, and they fixed it immediately. So it does come up in the United States as opposed to a territory or a possession. The other thing I followed was the fire season in California. The offices closing and where they sent the mail to was very important. Leo, any other questions?
Not at the moment, no. One thing I want to remind folks is that if they look at their screens, they can see under handouts, there is a handout which is today's slide, so they can use that as information after we're finished to refresh their memory or go back over anything. But I think we've covered all the questions that I've gotten so far.
So any come in afterwards, I'm always available. I can respond to them. So just, Leo, if you want to give them mailbox at Mailers Hub, we can, either myself or Michael, get back to them.
Right. If you have any questions at all, just send it to info or help@mailershub.com, and we'll just forward it along to Tom or Michael or whomever as appropriate. So I don't think I see any more questions. Did you have anything else here today, Tom or Michael?
Nope. If there's any topic you want covered in the future, please let Leo know, and he'll find the expert to present it.
Well, next Tuesday, for example, we're going to have sort of an out-of-schedule webinar covering the current status of the Postal Service as far as revenue goes and volume, and even what may be on the future on the horizon or not for assistance for the agency. So we'll have that next Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. Otherwise, I think we pretty much covered everything today about Seamless. I want to thank Tom, thank Michael for their help, thank everybody here for calling in. And if you have any questions, please do send them to us at either the help or info mailbox at mailershub.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you. If anybody has any questions about training their staff concerning the scorecard or Seamless or anything else, we offer that as well, and please contact us accordingly. Otherwise, thank you all for calling in today. We appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing you next time on one of our webinars. Thanks again. Thanks to Michelle. Thanks for keeping the lights on here, and Tom and Michael. So until we talk again, thanks again. Take care. Stay safe, folks. Bye.
Bye.